Hey guys, so we are gonna start our video on doing kind of odd shapes like fruit, and this is gonna be our first practice. We'll also do another practice that is going to be done on vases and glassware and stuff. So I'll go through all that and show you. But I wanted to go through this tutorial, and so I have my piece of fruit. I decided on a pear. I think it's a great shape to start with because it's not regular or round, or like an orange is too regular. So you want something that's a little off shape, that's a little lumpy in some areas. So you can look around and see what you have at the house, and that would work fine. So at any rate, okay, so we're going to start. So we have this lovely pear. I'm going to turn it slightly like that, I think, just to give it a nice look and shape. And I have it on a white piece of paper, and I can see a little bit of a shadow. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to do this, kind of right here, but I'm going to make it so that I could do 2 or 3 or start over again if I wanted to. So we'll just do one at a time. And when we do this, you want to just start with your main basic shape, which will be round, then plus this area that kind of sticks out. And so I'm just going to start really loose. Whenever I do any sketching, I'm going to start really sketching loose lines and keep them loose, layer them so they're in good shape, okay? You can see what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to, just look at where the stem is. That's a super important thing. So that's coming off of the side over here. And with observational drawing, you really want to look at what you're seeing. So one of the things that I'm seeing with this is where the stem is coming out is kind of in the field of this pear. So it's not off the end as if I were looking at it just from its exact profile, but it's in this space here. So that's kind of a little bit of that shape that I'm drawing here. And I'm just going to give myself just a little indication, a direction. Use my pencil, sometimes that's helpful, of the stem. So I'm just giving a little indication to that. And then also I can see right around the back side here that I have that pear coming around. So these are just really loose lines. All right, and then I notice there's kind of a little lump here, and then it comes down a little straight, and then it goes like that and into this shape. So right there it's loose. What I'm noticing as I'm kind of starting to really observe the pear is that I have it a little sticking out here, and there's more of a flat spot right through here, and then I'm having a little bit of flats and hills, and then bringing it up, and it's very roundy here and goes smoothly in right there. So that's just the shape that we want to start with. Really simple, okay? And this line right here, which was our first initial round area, is going to get kind of pushed away. But first we want to just start and see if we're really getting the shape the way we're seeing it. You want to include any marks. There's this little divot right here. And it's a little closer to this end. And it's angled a little like this. Okay. And trying to think of what else that would be a good nuance. I think that's about it. All right, so then once we have our loose sketch, the other thing I'm going to have you lightly sketch is just the shadow. Now what I want you to notice is where the shadow hits the object, where it comes out and then extends beyond. So I have it on a nice white piece of paper. It's easier to see. If I had it just on my brown desk, I wouldn't be able to see it. And it comes out like if this was halfway through the pear, it's a little to the left of that. So the shadow is here, and it comes out just with a little bend, and it goes like this. And then I notice it again, the other side of that shadow, right here, and it slightly arcs. And there's actually kind of almost a double shadow in there. So observation is really about kind of letting go of what you might think a pear looks like. Like a pear, you might say, oh, well, a pear looks like this, and it comes up like this, and it goes like this. And that's a quintessential pear, right? But we're not just looking at a quintessential pear. What we're looking at is the pear that's in front of us, this specific pear, which is what makes it observational drawing, really important. So once we get our loose sketch, you can tell that only takes a few minutes. We want to then start to look at what we call contour line. So we start with sketch, and then we go to contour line. Contour line is where we're really starting to look at that outside edge. And I started to do it a little bit with, this sketchy line right here, looking at the nuances. But we want to refine that and make it a little bit more specific. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to look here, and I want to look at the length of my stem. My stem needs to come out a little further. It has a little nuance out here, so I want to make sure I get, and it's wider at the end and a little bit more narrow here. Okay, and this is where you start to pick up some of the details. So, and I think that this line comes back just a little further. I think this is sticking out a little bit too much. And another handy thing is your eraser. And I think of an eraser as not something that kind of gets rid of mistakes, but it's really kind of something that helps develop your line a little bit. So from here, I'm trying to make sure that you guys can see how I'm doing this. I'm going to start to just really slowly look at the line and kind of develop it a little bit more into a consistent line. And I really have to look at the object, and this goes for anything that you're drawing. We're starting with something like a pear because I think it's very forgiving in a lot of ways. And it's important that you start with something that you can see it has a lot of imperfections. It's not something that's a geometric shape. It's not a circle. Like if we did an orange is really a circle, for the most part. Some oranges are a little odd shaped, but by and large, a pear is really kind of oddly shaped. So I think it makes it a nicer shape that really makes us focus on, this line that I'm creating right here. And one of the things I'm noticing is I'm not as flat on the bottom as I really look at this. So I'm going to curve that ever so slightly. I'm going to erase back some of my lines just so it doesn't get confusing. I'm not worried about erasing back too much yet, but just so I can really start to see that shape and how it's forming. I do definitely have a little divot here. And it kind of comes in a little bit there. And comes up right here. Okay. I definitely have this little bit of a flat on this side. And then very rounded here, very rounded up through here, and almost maybe just even a little more. I'm going to bring that up and bring it around to here. Now these are all, I'm kind of verbalizing what I'm seeing as I go, so you have an idea, and whatever you decide to draw, whether it's a odd shaped apple or a pear, maybe you have an interesting mango or something at home, whatever it is that you have at home, you're going to be going through this process. So then you can see where that got kind of shaped up just a little bit, so it's a little more specific now. I'm going to again use my eraser, kind of get in here and get rid of the lines that are no longer useful. Okay, and that roundish line I'm going to get rid of. Okay, and then I'm going to do this. Alrighty, so that's kind of my good basic shape. I really am starting to see this. I also have a nice line for my, I'm not going to go too much into the shadow lines because we'll use that as we're doing some shading, okay? But on the actual pear, I do want to look at where the highlights are and where the shaded areas of the pear are. So what you can see, because my light source is over here, you know, on this side, is that it's very bright right through here, especially around that area that has that little divot. And then it's brighter here, and then the strongest area of shadow is kind of on the lower side. I have a little bit of a bump right here, so I'm going to see a little bit of that. And then the whole thing has kind of a speckled effect. So one of the things I might want to do as I'm looking at this is just gently draw an outline on where some of the major shadows are. So I have a major shadow that kind of comes up over here. I'm doing this very lightly, like super light. And then I'm coming over here and I'm noticing there's a strong shadow here. And then there's a little area of highlight right here, just right here. And then strong shadow, mostly kind of angling down into this space. This is shadowed right through here, very strong. A little highlight right through here. But there's a stronger shadow on the back side there, okay? So now what we're going to do is shade it in. And there's a lot of techniques for shading, so you can, and I can go through those as we get a little bit more advanced into this when we get into pen work. But one of the things I'm going to ask you guys to do is just do something that's called cross-hatching. And it's a great directional thing, and you can do it slightly curved if you have a curved object, or you can do it straight. So if we're doing it, you know, along the pear, we're going to do kind of a curved cross-hatching, where you might start to shade like this using your pencil, and then you can come in another direction, and that will build up your shading, okay? So that's cross-hatching. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to try a little bit of shading with this. I'm going to start at my strongest point. So I know that it's more shaded here and more shaded here. I'm going to shade through there, and I'm going to definitely shade right up through here. And this one, I probably will do a couple of directions on this. Like this way and this way, just to kind of give it a sense of roundness. And these lines that I've put in before, just to kind of give myself an indication of where the shading is, those I can erase back. They're just areas that I can kind of look at it and go, okay, it's a little darker there, it's a little darker there, and this is kind of where I'm going to with this. So that's really important. And then I'm going to come in this other direction right here. Okay, I'm really kind of getting in a little bit more detail here. And then one area that I think is really important is right along here. That's a lot more shaded right through there. And this is very dark. Again, I'm going to work my contour line a little bit. Remember, your lines don't need to be perfectly straight. There's nuance to objects, so we want to make sure that we show that. So I'm going to do a little shading in on this stem. There's a really dark area. And we haven't gotten into a discussion on value. Value in art is, you know, the idea of light to dark and everything in between, like a grayscale. And so that's one of the things that when we start to do observational drawing, we get into. And that's a really important one. And you want to look at your objects and say, okay, what is the darkest thing I see? And for this one, it's definitely the stem. Okay, so I have a little bit of that stem in there. And this whole stem, in general, is darker than the pear. So it's okay to kind of really darken that. And that kind of also, what's nice about that is it gives me, you know, kind of one of my darkest points. All right. And then it's, again, right through here. I'm going to do a little shading right through the back side of that. It's definitely darker. Okay. don't be afraid of just the direction. If you're more comfortable using a straight line, that's totally fine. You can see kind of where this starts and stops. And that's also going to soften as we get to this stage right over here, because it doesn't just stop on a line. It just softens. So we're going from like a darker point to a lighter point. And then this will still, this pear is not the white of our page, so it's not going to be completely white when we're done. It's going to have some nuance, some lighter shade. The other thing that's good about this exercise is that it gives you practice. It gives you practice on controlling your pencil and getting it, to work at, the light or darkness that you want. So like when I'm trying to do this really nice line here, I'll press a little bit harder, but then when I'm starting to try to get a little bit of nuance, okay, then I can go a little lighter, and that just takes a little bit of practice, and that's just, this is just practice. We're going to eventually do a drawing that will include glassware and some sort of fruit. And I know you guys have seen this in the introduction that I've given to the project, and we'll be talking about it in class on Tuesday. But that's essentially what we're going to do, and we're going to work on not only the idea of creating, observational drawings based on what we see, but also we are going to try to create a little bit of distortion with the glass, which makes it kind of visually a more interesting still life, I think. So I have a little light spot there, and then I have this little pucker right here. That dent that we have, that little divot, so that it's lighter here, right through there, and it's a little darker on the edge. So one of the tools that we're also using, and I know I talked about it a little earlier in our reconstruction drawings, is a blending stump. And I will get out the blending stump. I love a blending stump. It's super useful, and it helps us not only with getting these lines to soften just a bit, but what it's also useful for is kind of giving you a little bit of variation in your grayscale, in your value. It helps you do that a little bit more accurately. Now, not everybody has a blending stump. We're not at school. If we were at school, we would have a blending stump. So what do you use? I think a Q-tip is an awesome substitution to a blending stump. So if you would like, you could get a Q-tip and you could use it in the same way. And they're cheap, so that's easy. And, so if it gets kind of frayed on the end, you just toss it or use the other end. That's totally cool. So that would be what I would use. But I would get a little bit of lead on there first before I started with a blending stump. So I get it kind of close to what I want as far as the amount of pencil lead and grayscale that I'm trying to go for here. And one of the things that I think is also really nice is making sure that that outside edge line is really emphasized. And what you're noticing that I'm doing is I'm pulling in from that edge a little bit with my pencil. And that helps emphasize that edge so it doesn't become just an outline, but it becomes really kind of the object. And I'd also, when you have multiple objects on the page, when you're eventually doing your still life, it will give you distinction between objects, which is really important. So we're going to just go like this. And then we have this area right here I'm being a little tentative with, because it's very light right through here. So I'm just trying to go very softly. And this is one of my darker areas, and then I have a little highlight right here, just a little area. So I'm going to try and just hit that a little bit. I'm using a combination of slightly curved, some straight areas. And then this I'm going to go over because, again, none of this pear is straight white. So it's all going to have some sense of gray, but I want to make sure that you're kind of balancing it. And my expectation with this for everybody is that you'll do this a couple of times. I'm going to say 2 to 3 would be really good. You can use different pieces of fruit if you're getting bored with one. Or just turn it. If you want to just use the same one, that's fine, and just turn it. But I want you to try this a few times so that you really have a sense of, how to get the nuance of an object. So you guys can see how that's coming along decently. Well, not bad, not too bad. And you could tell I'm doing multiple directions. The more directions you do with this kind of idea of cross-hatching, the softer it looks, the more blended it looks. And I'm stopping and looking, and I'm saying, okay, well, that kind of needs a little more right through here. And this needs to transcend to right here. And if you have something that has a lot of imperfections or marks on it, you can include those in your drawing. Sometimes I wait to the very end on that because I want to make sure I get kind of the rest of the nuance. The other thing with the pear, which is a lot of fun, is it tends to have those little speckles, which you could add at the end. And I think they look great. And you can make those a slightly darker, And if you have like a variation of pencils, let's say just a plain number 2 pencil, maybe you have one that's a little darker, one that's a little lighter. Some people may have different pencils at home, and that'd be great if you do. Like this one is a number 2, but it's a Stadler Norica, and I know I've seen a lot of students with these, so you may have these at home. These tend to be a little bit darker than a regular number 2, and they're great. So if you want something that has a little variation, that might be a good one to try. Okay, so I'm going to work this just a little bit more through here. I want to make sure that I really get a sense of shadow right through here, that this is in the darker area. And in some ways, your eyes are how you see, comparative to a photograph or a drawing for that matter. Your eyes and the way your mind processes what you see are incredibly efficient, and you see quite a bit. So what you really want to do is start to look and focus, compare, one area to the other. How does that change? How is that different from the background? How is that different from other things on your desk? Really important things to take notice of. And I really want you guys to take your time with this. This is a starting exercise, so I know that it's going to take a little bit of concentration and getting used to. But try not to get frustrated. Try to enjoy it. Drawing in and of itself can be super meditative. And I really enjoy it. Of course, I'm the art teacher, so I would. But I think you guys can enjoy it too. I think it's really important to allow yourself just a little time, a little free space. And see what you can come up with. Alright, so that looks kind of roughly where I want it right now. If there's a little extra, I can use my eraser. That's really good. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I have, I think, enough pencil lead on there that I could start to use my blender, or if I had a Q-tip, that would be fine too. If you have a Q-tip, make sure it's nice and tight, not loose. So you want to spin it a little with your fingers. Okay, and so from here, I'm just going to do a little bit of blending. I'm not trying to do too much, just a little. Just keep it nice and soft. And what's nice about this is you can kind of push this lead around, you know, in areas that might need a little more emphasis, and or areas that might need a little less. Like this area is highlighted, but it's not that highlighted, so I'm going to kind of give it a soft look. And this is a round object, so I'm going to go along a little bit with my pencil line, but I'm also going to kind of, see how I'm making it a little bit circular. So you can kind of play with the direction and how you're using this tool to create, you know, the shape and the nuance of the object. You know, try it out. This is like, you know, practice right now. So if you do something and you're like, that's not really what I wanted, then don't worry about it. You know, it's all about trying it, and then maybe you do it, you know, a little different the next time. That's okay. Okay, so you can see how that's starting to affect the drawing a little bit. And then we're going to come up here. This is our darker area. I do like the way the roundness is looking. And the reality is, as a pencil drawing, this is still a little bit darker than what the actual object is, because we're working in grayscale. It's a little different than if we were painting it or something. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And then I'm gonna just give that a little blend right along the stem, so it looks like it's, you can really see on that stem where this is like the dark side and that's the lighter side, but the whole thing is a little bit dark. So there's that. And then I might, you know, if I had a Q-tip, I might switch sides, but I'm going to turn this over just a little bit to do the highlighted side, because I don't want to put too much lead down on this. If I want a little more, I could blend it a little more. Sorry, that's my phone. Okay, let me turn that off because that's a little annoying. There we go. Okay, so that's my pear. Not too bad so far. The other thing you can do, and I think this is a fun thing to do towards the end, is where you have almost like little bits of shine. You can add a little bit of that highlight using an eraser. And that will give you areas of kind of a little brightness. It's still, you know, it's like kind of that push and pull of the pencil lead. So it's leaving some there. It's not completely erasing it, but it's almost using the eraser like another drawing tool, you know? And I'm noticing a little bit more highlight through here. So I'm going to come back in through here, blend that a little, and maybe a little up through here. Okay, come back. So it's, you notice, like I might come back to the pencil a little bit. I might use the eraser again, you know, my blending tool. The one thing I wouldn't use as a blending tool as much as your finger. Sometimes it works. I think it's great with charcoal. I think it's a really great tool with charcoal to use your finger. But I feel like you get kind of an under highlight from the paper right here, which is kind of cool. I feel like your finger is not, it's too big to actually really get a good blend. So I think a Q-tip is a little better in this application, okay? So the other thing I want to do too is really use the eraser for areas that I have some sketch. All right, so that's looking decent. I can live with it. All right, and now I want to do shadow. Now, the thing when you look at shadow, and it's probably hard for you guys to see completely in the video, but you see like right here where there's like a really strong hard shadow, and then the rest is just like super soft, right? So you want to have those distinctive two types of shadow, all right? And so right through here, when I look at this, there is like a littler spot that has the strongest shadow right here. And it doesn't get very big, but it is the darkest shadow. And it is probably the same darkness as that stem, you know, as far as drawing goes. So you, like, what you really want to make sure is that area is not only distinctly different from the pear, okay? So we know it's a shadow, not the pear. And then it's going to blend out from there. So I just start, sometimes I just start with just this. That way I can really see, you know, where my shadow is. It's just this little like crescent moon shape, right? And then I have the rest and it all blends from there. Okay, so you can do, this is a great, again, a great thing for hatching or cross hatching, just using, and you notice my pencil is, it's not like this, it's not like directly pointed down, but it's really kind of on a nice angle. And I start right from the pear and I work my way out. And, you know, I know that this is, it's hard. What's difficult for me in teaching you guys remotely is that, like, as you're doing this, I can't kind of help give pointers. But I will say that a lot of times when I do demonstrations in class, I will set up that little camera and just work right alongside you so you can kind of see how I'm doing the drawing. So it is, by doing a video like this, it is kind of similar to how we might be working in class. If your pencil has like a little, sometimes your pencil ends up, I sometimes get like a, feels like it's a little scratchy or it's not like making the mark the way you want it, just turn it. Sometimes it gets like a little inconsistency in the lead. And you notice I'm not really worried about how far I'm going out. Not at this stage. We could erase back and create the shape of this later. I'm not really worried about it. I'm just going out. You know, I'm not taking it fast. I'm not going back and forth like this. I'm really doing one mark at a time. And when I hit that shadow, I make sure I get right in there in that shadowy area because we want to kind of extend that. I went a little too far on that. I'll have to come back and fix that. And then there's a slightly lighter shadow. It comes around a little less distinctive at the top. And then I want to make sure I get it kind of evenly filled. And again, you can use a Q-tip or a blending stump if you happen to have one at home and blend this out if you'd like to. Or you can leave it more linear if you'd like to as well. Depends on how. And then now what I need to do is, I have this little hard shadow and then I have, you know, this lighter shadow. Now I got to blend that because now it just looks like a weird little spot. And this really kind of, the way the shadow goes around is it kind of comes around one side because of the light and then comes around this side. So the light is kind of going around this pear and it's leaving almost like a crisscrossed shape like that right through here. So you want to, it's very soft and it's a shadow, so it's not distinct. So you want to kind of get into that shadow and blend from where the hard shadow is to where the soft shadow is. And it creates almost like a triangular shape, but not quite. Kind of. And this takes a little work. And sometimes a little erasing back. And I like to try to go both directions. I'm going to kind of move my body just a little here. Because it really is the light's wrapping around this way, and then the light's wrapping around that way. So we're really getting a little bit of two directions. And this will give us that, just a little bit of that blend. You don't want to go out too far. It doesn't go out too far, but it does go out a little bit. And you really got to look at it and make sure you're getting it just the way you want it. Like that. That's kind of what I want, right? I'm going to come back just a little in the other direction. Kind of soften it out like that. And I think that kind of does it. Now, one of the other tricks that we have in the art room, amongst all of our tricks, is that we do tend to, especially on the shadow lines, especially when we're working on these types of still lifes, we really do re-emphasize that kind of bottom line. So remember, we're creating a drawing, not a photograph. So when you have a slightly more distinct line around the edge of something, which is called a contour line, this is our contour line, it just tends to make the object pop a little bit more. It gives us a sense of it in its place, if that makes sense. Okay, so this shadow goes out, and it goes out onto my little green board that I have here. Yeah, I think it would kind of come out to this point, and then it's going to eventually end. I am going to, you might see like how it ends around the shape, but I don't see it in my drawing, or I don't see it in my observation because I've put it here. If I were to pull it back here, I might see more of the shadow. Let me try that just a little. Yeah, see, I see a little bit more of that space. Maybe I'll draw that too. So we're getting a little of that shape. You guys, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that in this. So I have this, and it's elongated, you know, because it's not the same shape. It's a shadow, as if you were standing, you know, in the sun yourself. You might look longer. So it's a little bit like that. So we're gonna extend that out. We're gonna use our eraser as a drawing tool as well. And we're gonna get that shadow in there just the way we want to. Also, if you have a little eraser on, sometimes your pencil catches on that. I'm getting a little of that. And it's going to be a little bit skewed and a little bit, you know, fuzzy because it's a shadow. So it'll have some distinction, but not too much. So we'll see like how it looks. And we even have, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's just a slight shadow of the stem. It's slightly off of the, there's like a second shadow right over here. That's pretty interesting. So it's like a little lighter, and it's a little darker in here, so darken that. And then I'm going to come back and blend slightly and like so. That looks pretty good. Not bad. Not bad. Okay, blending step. Totally lost it. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Okay. So that the blending step's going to help again. Or the Q-tip, whatever it is that you're using. Or you may have something else that's soft at home that you're using. Whatever. Again, You know, like this area might be okay for your finger if you wanted to try using your finger. I tend to like to use either the stump or the Q-tip. And the Q-tip is, you know, we actually do that a lot in the art room, so. I'm going slightly off the direction of my lines, just so I'm blending over and softening. That looks nice. A little higher on that. There we go. And then I'm going to just soften some of my lines right here to kind of highlight that second shadow line. So remember, the eraser is not the thing that gets rid of mistakes. The eraser is a way of making marks as well. An eraser is really a useful tool. And it can create highlights like we have in here. I like to talk about an eraser more as a tool. Because I think a lot of people just think it's there to get rid of marks. It's really not. Okay, so that's a nice soft shadow. I'll round it up a little bit at the end. There we go. And then this one right here. This is our second shadow. It goes like that. A little bit of a, like, it's like a lighter shadow area there. Okay, so that's my pear. Last detail that I might stick in it, if I were interested in doing that, is just any dark details. Like I have a couple of little imperfections in the skin that I'm adding. And to give it a sense of, you know, this is something that I'm really looking at. Kind of a darker area here. And those would be some details that I would add in to kind of really give it a sense of authenticity. The other detail that you could add.
Hey, Mama.
I'm videotaping. Sorry, as you guys, I'm sure, are at home. We have a lot going on all the time. So that's pretty good. The last thing is the speckles. So if you wanted to do the speckles, you could get your darker pencil and do just like a little pokey thing like that. Or you could, you know, really just spend a moment and start to speckle. This is where you're turning your pen or your pencil kind of upright. You know, and if you look at the speckles that are actually on the skin, they're not like regular. It's not like a regular thing. You know, they're irregularly placed. So you don't, with something like that, that kind of detail, you could have a little fun with it. Not worry about getting each speck exactly where it is on the pear, but you're really kind of just giving your impression of the speckles of the pear. And how I notice them very strongly on the highlighted area that has more of the light, so that I might really want to concentrate on, you know, that. There we go. There we go. Okay. I'm going to call that done. Get rid of that. So what I'd like you guys to work on this week is just this. Try it. That took us, oh gosh, I'm not sure how long. 45 minutes. So I'd like you to do this at least 2 times. And it would be great if the first time you did it kind of right along with me and just got a similar object and worked kind of at the same pace that I'm doing with this, and that would make it kind of an easy to understand, like how much time you should be spending on this. Okay, so this was about 45 minutes. So definitely, if you did this twice, that would be really great just for the first week. And I think 2 times would give you a good amount of practice. It would be very similar to how we would be doing it in class, so it's kind of the same thing. And I feel like you would have a good sense of how we're going to start our still life when we're getting ready to do that as a final drawing. Okay, so that's it. I hope you guys are doing well, and it's good to hang with you for a little bit. Take care.